What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Haela of the Almighty Liturgy. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you here. This new album, 93696, is extraordinary. Like, I just the conceptual nature behind it, the way that it moves, it really just spawned so many visions and just so much enlightenment. Was there sort of like a vision that you had uh, going into the making of this album? Was it almost like a continuation of Origin of the Alimonies, or was this meant to be kind of like new territory for liturgy?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's kind of a non-musical vision, like I love the idea of like heaven or like what heaven would sort of look like or sound like. Um, and so I wanted it to be really kind of just radiant and complicated and massive, which I guess a lot of our albums are like, but maybe more so. Um, and beyond that, I think it was less of a continuation of our most recent album and more almost like I kind of think of it as like an update um, of well, we have our second album, kind of our first big album is Aesthetica, which is like old. And then I've done a lot of sort of innovation musically since then. And I think part of the drive in this album was to kind of like combine, I guess, newer techniques with kind of older, more metal oriented, like riffage sort of. Because I think that more recent albums have actually rocked less kind of. And so, yeah, it's kind of meant to be like a synthesis, I guess, of a lot of different sides of the band.
Yeah, because I mean, one of my favorite moments of the album is where it goes into Angel of Sovereignty and then goes right into Heligen, because I just love that operatic sort of epic nature behind it. Was this coming from? Was there a lot of internal sources of inspiration conceptually, or was there like a lot of observation as with the making of this album?
I think for this one, mostly internal. Like, I feel like it really is influenced by older liturgy in a way, but that stuff obviously is influenced by other stuff. And like, I think one general source of influence for me has always been like just like sort of cinematic composition, I guess, sort of like a film score or like the actual language of classical music that world kind of comes from, like romantic 19th century classical music.
Mm-hmm.
And that it can be kind of cringe to use metal and then like combine it with classical music. And I think earlier records have been kind of going in that direction through noise rock or screamo or something like that. But this one is really leaning in on the kind of soundtrack quality, I think. And maybe that is actually something that's a little new about the record, is that like the interludes on the album have a little more, like there's more work that went into the interludes, I think, to kind of make them like standalone instrumental pieces.
But with having the concepts of sovereignty and hierarchy, emancipation and individuation, my apologies. Is it does every like side of that almost represent a new meaning in a way? Like, is it almost expressing something completely different, or being that it's still on 93696, it's still kind of conveying a similar message?
Well, each of those concepts has a different meaning. And to learn more about that, I refer you to my philosophy YouTube channel where I talk about it more. Mm. But they're visions for sort of what like a new sort of heavenly phase of society could sort of be governed by, I guess. And something I'm interested in just like generally as an artist is kind of like having music over here that like you wouldn't really know that from the album, but like having music over here that sort of has meaning on its own terms, but then having that kind of encoded with ideas, like sort of pointing towards another body of work that's like philosophy and ideas that you can kind of be pointed to by hearing the music. So yeah, so each, I mean, each section, so each of the there's four sections on the album. It's kind of the four sides of the record or whatever, and each of them kind of has a musical coherence. Um, but musically, they're all kind of the same language, really. And but yeah, those four words refer to four concepts that aren't on the album.
Was the EP that you released before it, As the Blood of God Bursts in the Veins of Time, was that meant to be kind of like a preview of, or like the trailer in a way, of what 93696 would be like?
Yeah, I mean that EP is mostly derived from one very long song on the album, which is 93696, as well as a sort of an acoustic track where I sing. That's kind of the first song I've ever put out where I'm actually doing sung vocals, which I was kind of shy about. And so I wanted to kind of put that on an EP, and then also that yeah, I don't know. It was, yeah, I guess, yeah, yes, I think, yeah, it was kind of a trailer, I'd say.
Yeah, and I thought that was very admirable to also like show a different side of your voice when you compare like the artwork to like Aesthetica, as you mentioned before, or like HAQQ, to have like this new side of your voice. Does that maybe express a different side of who you are than what we would normally hear in the aggressive vocal style?
Yeah, kind of. I've always been like a little bit unsure about what to do with vocals because I've sort of intuitively always had this really shrieky kind of vocal scream that really comes originally from playing in screamo bands, like in high school, um, which kind of works with black metal. Um, and then yeah, on the artwork I sang, but it was kind of in this like um, kind of like chill wave style or something that like I wasn't totally happy with that. And I've been working more on just getting better at just kind of singing well and kind of combining the screams with singing and like it's not exactly a different, it's kind of a different side, but like I think that the way that I scream is kind of musical too. uh I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of room to grow in that direction in the liturgy project. Like there's the, it bores me a little bit that I'm kind of always just screaming.
Well, you have your own distinct scream though, which I think is fascinating. Not to discredit like like a lot of the classic death metal bands, but like I feel like Deicide and Cannibal Corpse, they kind of have like the same sort of like aesthetic within their growls in a way. But your scream reminded me a lot, which is something that made me gravitate towards liturgy, is because my favorite black metal band is Life Lover, and like they've always had those unique screams behind it, and yeah, they've always had those unique screams behind their signature sound in a way, and like their unique way of blending it. So that was kind of what made me gravitate towards liturgy in a way.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It's like yeah, a lot of screaming is very generic for sure, and yeah, every now and then there's someone who yeah puts their little like mark on screaming technique or does it uniquely. I think I just sort of like to yeah be screaming a little more out of sync with the music than you might expect. I think uh, it almost like I feel like it's almost what is it? It's almost inspired by like the way Bjork sings or something. Like she's always kind of like just off the beat.
Yeah.
And I mean other bands do that too, but I mean I love doing it. Like I really I get so into it when we're playing live and I'm screaming and I don't really know what that's about. Like not everyone has a drive to scream, but it's very satisfying to me.
Yeah, it always works. If you should look up this band called An Autumn for Crippled Children. Rather questionable band title, but that I think has a lot of that sort of out of sync, but like like musically it's black metal, but like the way that like it's also like it's so weird. Like it's the weirdest black metal you'll ever hear, but like in that kind of way. So I think you would appreciate that
Yeah.
band.
Autumn for Crippled Children.
Yeah.
Hey, also maybe Jacob Bannon from Converge.
Oh yeah.
Like he seems pretty in sync, but it's like it's very high pitched. It's very like throat shredding, you know. Like a lot of screamers are kind of, it's very controlled. Um, anyway, yeah, I'll check them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of Converge, oh sorry, go ahead.
No. But speaking of Converge, you mentioned I interviewed Jacob Bannon twice, so like I love talking Converge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just saw on Twitter that today is I forget what anniversary of Jane Doe coming out.
Oh wow.
Which yeah, that album came out when I was in like I guess high school or something, maybe middle school, and it just like totally changed my life. So yeah, I was excited. I saw on like rateyourmusic.com's Twitter page that they're
that's a fantastic album. It's a fantastic album, one of the best covers ever. I was in elementary school when that album came out, though, so I had to discover it much later, sadly. But yeah, one day they'll perform that album in full for me. But depending on what the lyrical subject matter could be about, if it's more personal or more philosophical, more metaphorical or more literal, does that maybe resonate with you differently, or do you maybe channel a different energy into that song depending on what the content can be about?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the songs, like the lyrics of the songs tend to not really be about anything, you know, like they come from a personal place, and they're all similar to one another, but I couldn't really tell you what they're about, you know, like they feel like sort of raw and magical, and I read them as being kind of intimate, but in this sort of like impersonal way, like sort of some kind of intimacy in general. But yeah, I don't know what to say about the lyrics. I do put a lot of work into them, but yeah, they're not like about my life or experiences, and they're not philosophical either. They're just kind of poetry. I think I put the most work into the lyrics of Aesthetica. So like that record, I feel like the lyrics are the best, and that they've kind of gone downhill since then, actually. But yeah, I don't know, but like yeah,
Your lyrics
they're
are
poetic.
your lyrics are awesome. I'm gonna have to disagree that they went downhill. I think your lyrics are always thought provoking. So,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Thanks.
But do you think, because I know that you studied philosophy and you also wrote transcendental black metal, and you have like these different methods of expressing yourself and analyzing the world, that has to provide some sort of an advantage with lyric writing, right?
Well, I mean, sorry. Oh, oops. Hold on.
No, you're good.
Just moving in. Okay. Um, yeah, I think somehow they maybe convey something of maybe there is something philosophical that they convey about how life is, or something like reality underneath something more superficial. I don't know, but I don't think it's an advantage. I don't think it's an advantage. I think it's just a perspective.
That's a great quote. It's not an advantage; it's a perspective. I like that quote a
I mean,
lot.
if anything, it's to be a disadvantage. You know, I think that like it's something I've chosen, but like I think that the fact that the music is so philosophical really closes off a lot of people to liturgy, because like like in the wider world, a lot of for a lot of people, like the idea of sort of having a philosophical vision attached to your band is like problematic or something, and like that. Yeah, in some ways it's a disadvantage, but I mean I really like having those two things in resonance. So I'll take the sort of alienating certain people in order to be able to do it. But I bet my life would actually be easier if there were less philosophy in music.
Yeah, I mean, I think a philosophy in music is almost like another acquired. Like people like Mastodon fans love like the philosophical nature of music. A lot of like the prog, like Steven Wilson fans or Dream Theater fans or even Tool fans would like maybe appreciate that. But like there are some people where it's just like I just want brutal, shreddy, full force, loud stuff, and I don't have time to get too deep into it.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely. Those counter examples that you mentioned are good. Yeah.
When it comes to getting like the inspiration to write, and in order to like get that creative fire, do you almost seek out the inspiration? Can you go looking for creative energy, or does it just kind of have to strike you?
I mean, like my relationship to music is just like it's just like a flood, you know. I do what I can to turn it off, you know, to like not go crazy. Like uh, I'm always that's just how it's always been. I've always had a like it's always felt very like urgent and important to me to be writing music. And you know, the difficulty has been sort of figuring out how to learn how to use different tools or like put together different styles to express what feels like it needs to come out. Um, but and so I think sometimes I'm blocked, kind of. But even if I'm blocked from writing, I still like really want to be writing, and I'm just kind of like um, you know, I'm separated from it. But um, and I mean, not everyone's like that. And I mean, I think a lot of people make really good music who aren't like that. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's funny how different artists have different personality types. Mine is very much one where I just like can't turn it off.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes like art has always kept art interesting. Is like every like artist's journey is unique in that regard. You're not going to find two artists whose journeys are similar. There's some like occupations where like everybody goes through the same training, they have to take the same courses, study the same everything, and then they're all kind of, you know, having that same technique, which I don't think is a bad thing also because it depending on what it is, it's very much needed. But like I think with like the sort of musical journey or the artistic journey that we all face, I think is what makes the artistic journey always unique for centuries.
Yeah, totally. It's also so crazy how like in a way there's something that all art that is good or significant has in common. There's some way in which it kind of lights up and like makes you light up and makes you think or something, or just, you know, makes you really want to come back to it, which is universal. And yet at the same time, like there's only certain people respond to certain kinds of things. There are certain artists who like you know, I'm certain they're geniuses and like, you know, people love them. And I just like could never imagine. Sorry, I'm like coughing. Um, like I could never imagine enjoying their music. But like it's funny how like it's so partitioned that like there's a certain like tribe or something that like can hear what you're doing, and there are other tribes that like even though like you're clearly doing something that matters, like it's just like gibberish to them.
Do you think that's something like people are born with, or like it's one's taste? Like, what was I always? Because I wasn't listening to, you know, I love death metal, but I wasn't listening to Deicide when I was in kindergarten class. You know, like I didn't start getting into that until I was in my 20s. So can you almost like make people? Can you like change people's opinion? I don't know. Like I'm always wondering if like taste or what attracts us to certain art is something that we're born with.
Yeah, I don't know what it is because like I've like there are artists that I've like tried. I don't know why I'm making a point of bringing this up, but like David Bowie, for example. I would love to like David Bowie. Like I think he's really cool and interesting, and I've like tried to like basically make myself like his music, and like I just I just don't get it at all. Like to me it could be anything. I would never notice it or like pick it out as like something good. Even though aesthetically I like it, I identify with it kind of. Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I've always thought, and this is kind of like a vulgar analogy, but I always thought like one's taste is almost kind of like maybe like a fetish in a way, where like maybe you're not like born with that fetish, but maybe certain experiences or life lessons or something like that makes you gravitate towards it or something like that.
Yeah, it's probably some mix of life experiences and just like a disposition, or maybe maybe if it's the kind of thing that you're good at too. I like that's um everything that I've really loved has then, like, eventually I've kind of turned it into a material, um and it's refined like the art that I make in some way. And I'm happiest when liturgy's music does that for someone else, where it kind of opens up. Everyone has all this potential, and like sometimes you can just encounter someone else like fulfilling their potential in some way that hits you, and you're like, oh, that's because I have that potential too, and then you kind of start going through the process that's a little bit awkward at first of like unearthing like an ability. So I think a lot of times what you like is a kind of like message from your unconscious about what you're good at.
Yeah, because I mean, there are songs where I don't really like the lyrics that much or don't relate to the lyrics as much, but I love the melody behind it, and then vice versa. There's like music where I may not like the music per se, but the message behind it is just so resonating. So like, and then when you get both at the same time, it's an awesome musical experience. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And when I was in art school, we learned how art, science, and philosophy all kind of like evolved together so much. Like so, like when I studied like impressionism painting, Ernst Haeckel's theory of light was very influential. We saw how like Freud was very influential on like surrealism in a way. Is there like does philosophy? When I was in art history class, I heard every philosopher from like Confucius to Socrates, Voltaire, like all those guys. Do you think philosophy makes as much of an impact on us as either as artists or individuals as it did back then in a way?
Well, yeah, I think it depends. I mean, there are famous connections between Schopenhauer's philosophy and the music of Wagner. If you like classical
I love
music,
that.
a lot of people don't care about classical music. Um, I think, I think that the philosophy of Deleuze, I don't know if you know who that is, but like there's a French philosopher who's sort of like a really big deal in a certain circle of philosophy, but isn't actually that well known in the wider world, who kind of came of age in like the 60s and 70s, and like is like a kind of libidinal materialist. And I think a lot of rock music is connected to that, like a kind of vision of like just things evolving in a kind of anarchic way or something. Um, and that's certainly Deleuze has been a big influence on me. I think Aleister Crowley is a big influence on a lot of rock musicians too. Who's not a philosopher exactly. He's more of an occultist. Um, but Yeah, but probably music and art are a little. It seems like these days there's more reciprocal influence between music and art than music and philosophy. And I think there's a lot between art and philosophy, but the music philosophy connection is, I think, weaker than the other two.
Yeah, but I think it can. I mean, With I think liturgy could almost be like somebody's gateway into philosophy more. Like I think you could be somebody's gateway into a lot of different genres, whether it be like black metal or avant-garde or whatnot, or but you could also be somebody's gateway into studying more deeper meanings in philosophy. I know people who, thanks to certain albums or certain bands, got very into different subject matters. Like I discovered A Clockwork Orange thanks to Sepultura's concept album about that. Like I got into more about Russian. Like I became obsessed with Rasputin after hearing Mastodon's Crack the Sky. So I think
Yeah.
metal has kind of been a gateway into people exploring other things.
Yeah, and that's something I think it happens in general. And that's something that I uh, really like to try to emphasize. I really want the music to be a gateway into particular philosophical views, and like, because the thing about music is that there's such a wider audience for music than there is for philosophy, or for art. And so, like I'm always very aware that, like, I'm living in New York. There are these kind of cultural worlds that are overlapping of like people who all make music and art and philosophy, and like, but the range of like music audiences is much wider than that. A lot of people don't live in a world like that at all. You live in New York too, right?
I'm live in Manhattan,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. So it's like there's like children, there's like 12-year-olds or whatever who like listen to liturgy who don't. And so yeah, I think of uh, music's ability to kind of get out there is really really special. And on the reverse side, academia is a pretty like awful place, and like, if like I studied philosophy, like there's like an alternate world where maybe I just like was a philosophy professor or something, but like that, you know, that's so kind of sealed off from like real culture. And like I think a lot of people who do philosophy in an academic context end up having to make all these compromises to sort of get a certain academic job and that kind of thing. And like, so being able to really consciously put music and philosophy together and then have it be a kind of little cultural arena of its own that isn't inside academia, or isn't like, you know, totally in lockstep with the music industry, but to kind of be a nexus between the two is something I care a lot about.
yep. And you led me perfectly into the final question, actually. And it's kind of like as deep as the other questions, but why do, in terms of the type of music that we hear in liturgy, because I know that you've played with like a lot of other bands before, like I know that you played with like the Birthday Boys, that was like more of like a screamo post-hardcore band,
Yeah.
but like why do you feel that maybe like the philosophical nature of liturgy, how do you think that resulted in the music that we do here, because it's such an experimental sound that has many different sort of sounds and vibes and emotions? How do you think like maybe your philosophical hand almost subconsciously guided to the sound that we would hear off of everything from the Immortal Life EP to now?
Yeah, I think a little bit. Um, I think that's why I chose to kind of conceive of liturgy as black metal, because black metal is often really connected with philosophy of a certain kind, at least kind of like cosmic philosophy or something. And because honestly, like I've always listened to way more like screamo and post-hardcore than black metal. That's really the scene that I same.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the scene that I was in, sort of. But, I wasn't exactly in a scene, but like, and I encountered black metal from the perspective of already going to see screamo bands, and there's so much musical resonance between those two styles that isn't really obvious on the surface aesthetics. And actually, I kind of hate, but I don't really like the aesthetics of screamo. Like I was in Birthday Boys, but that wasn't like that was my like the band existed before I joined it, and like, if I had gotten a vote on the name, it's Birthday Boys with a Z at the end. Like it's like it was this whole thing of sort of writing this really emotive music, but having like a sort of jokey aesthetic that a lot of bands like that were doing, which like I went along with, but was just not my vibe. Um, and yeah, I think and I mean there were, I guess, I don't know, like Orchid was kind of philosophical, so I don't know. I was almost going to say the black metal made calling it black metal kind of made it more coherent to be doing philosophy with it, but it's probably not as simple as that, but there's something to that.
Yeah. But before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome conversation. And most of all, thank you just for your awesome music. Again, I can't wait for like more people to discover liturgy. I think it's gonna really open up people to just a whole new perspective of metal and music in general. Is there just anything else with liturgy you'd like to promote in terms of shows coming up, or what else we could be expecting in the near future?
Oh yeah. Well, we're anyone who's watching from Europe, we're gonna go on a Europe tour in a couple weeks, and then if anyone happens to be in Japan or Australia, we'll be touring there later in the year. So look out for those shows, maybe.
Hell yeah, maybe a New York show somewhere in the works, please.
Yeah, we got it. I don't. We've been just doing so much touring that we haven't scheduled a New York show in a while. So yeah, I'm sure we'll do one before the year's up.
Please, like we got to get like a New York like black metal show, like Black Anvil, Liturgy, Imperial Triumphant, like all that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we got to make that happen.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Liturgy. Be sure to check out their brand new album, 93696. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.